Hi, everyone. I'm Irene O'Connor. Let's take a look at what was happening in Connecticut today in history. 1 year ago, just weeks after the attack on the Capitol in Washington, D.C., law enforcement was making sure Hartford was protected from a planned protest. Chief political reporter Susan Raff has the story.
If you came to the state capitol complex today, this is what you saw. Armored vehicles, lots of weapons, and lots of National Guard and state police. This was all in anticipation of a protest at the state capitol that didn't happen.
There is always security around the state capitol, but not like this. There were armed guardsmen and police at every entrance, and all of the nearby streets were blocked off. After the violence at the nation's capital, Connecticut forces wanted to be ready.
We don't want to fight, and we didn't want to pick a fight with anybody, and we don't want to arrest anybody. So if the day ends and the week ends peacefully, bravo again for the state of Connecticut.
Law enforcement did have some challenges. They were kept in the dark because several social media outlets for activist groups were shut down.
Certainly, law enforcement lost an arm of their intelligence gathering.
To prepare, they mobilized with a heavy presence. Across the country, there were protesters at several state capitals, mostly small groups and mostly peaceful. Here in Connecticut, there were hundreds of state and capitol police officers, not to mention the Connecticut National Guard. Some who made comments to us on Facebook were critical. Pat Benayad said, "What a waste of taxpayer money."
This is the democracy that represents the world, and it's definitely weird to see that kind of stuff happening here.
Like many, Andres Bilalom was stunned to see so many violent protesters barge their way into the nation's capital. As for the state he lives in.
Do you think this is an overreaction with all this military presence?
No, I'm sure they're doing the right thing, because look at what happened in the Capitol. I mean, who would have thought they would have done something like that?
Well, nothing happened here today other than a huge turnout of military and police. President Biden's inauguration is just days away, this Wednesday. And law enforcement here in Connecticut are now deciding what type of presence they want going forward. In Hartford, Susan Raff, Channel 3, Eyewitness News.
5 years ago, on January 17th, Hartford police took steps to help protect officers against possible overdoses, including the canine officers.
We want to get our user population protected. We also want to get our detectives and our canines, because we're all fishing in the same pond here. We all face the same dangers.
Deputy Chief Brian Foley says detectives started asking if they could get Narcan kits to not only better protect themselves, but also their canine counterparts.
We've seen some incidents nationally where dogs have actually overdosed on, be it either fentanyl, heroin, or other opioids, synthetic opioids.
But Narcan, the drug used to reverse a heroin or opioid overdose, could have potentially saved their lives, which is why Foley called the Greater Hartford Harm Reduction Coalition, an organization that specializes in awareness and prevention, to see if they could get some kits.
We're just trying to stay as best prepared as we can.
In 2017, there have already been 6 fatal overdoses. 4 of those happened in the last week, and that number is expected to rise throughout the year. In 2016, the city had 75 overdose deaths, and that number doesn't even include the 200 Narcan saves made by the fire department.
It took a while to get up to speed, but the amount of fatal overdoses that occur are just incredible.
These canine kits are the same ones that would be used on a person experiencing an overdose.
So we have to do everything in our power to make sure that the information and the medication gets to the people who need it most.
And 10 years ago, we were introduced to a local artist whose work was on display in the state capitol building. Scott Haney shows us his amazing talent, and all without a lesson.
Ladies and gentlemen, I honestly don't know how to start this story because there is such a plethora of material done by this beautiful artist, David Wagner. David, you are a resident of Connecticut, live in Scotland, correct?
Right.
And we are in the Capitol.
Yes.
In the legislative, the corridor.
The corridor, I guess there's a special name for this.
And this month,
Concord.
The Concord. And this month, you have donated your pieces of art for everyone to enjoy.
Yes.
And I don't think anybody knows it. So I want to get the word out that your work is here. First of all, such an accomplished artist. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm 71 years old, and I painted most of my life. Never had a lesson in my life. I'm a history major, taught history for a while, but history without pictures, as I said, is a dull subject.
Now, and again, as you look at each one of these pieces that our videographer Peter's capturing, never had an artist lesson in your life.
No, it's true.
This is wild. Look at the detail of his work, the landscapes, the portraits, the montages, the color, the expressions on the faces, the likenesses of the famous. This particular scene of a very strong and heroic group of African-American soldiers fighting during the Revolutionary War.
And this has been sold over 6 million times for different publications.
Yeah, mostly textbooks.
And again, the details.
But the details to the buttons, I mean, everything is so historically as accurate as possible.
It has to be as accurate as possible, as accurate as I can make it.
Otherwise you won't do it.
I won't do it at all.
His composite of 9/11.
We all know what happened at Fateful Day, September 11th. I wanted to commemorate it in some sort of way, so I made a montage and put it all together.
How many paintings do you think you've done in your life?
Probably a couple of thousand.
A couple of thousand. So come and check this exhibit out. I mean, it spans the length of the corridor, and it continues beyond us.
The whole collection, just in Connecticut alone.
All right, so great Scott, great David. Come on out and check out his artwork. This is magnificent.
That's a look at today in history.